Hey guys, welcome back to Bungus Custom Bikes. Today we're doing something a little different. We're outside. And that's because this big behemoth won't fit in the shop. So we're working remote, kind of. But anyways, it needs a water pump. So we got parts. Let's get to it. So, like I was saying, this needs a water pump. It is a 2007 Yamaha Venture Star. I believe it is 1500 cc's. Y'all Yamaha people can correct me if I'm wrong. And it needs a water pump. So the owner said that it was mixing water and oil, or coolant and oil. And we know it's not a head gasket because it's not in the oil is in the coolant. And that's pretty common with these. They say that it leaks into the coolant bypass, or overflow, excuse me, the overflow. The oil will leak into the coolant overflow when the seals in the water pump start going bad. So we have a rebuild kit. This comes with a water pump bearing as well. All new gaskets, all new O-rings, bearing, everything it needs to basically rebuild all the seals in the water pump. Normally, water pumps on motorcycles are a pain in the butt to get to because they're typically tucked up underneath, either in the front or in the back. This one is right here. Real easy to get to. We can tell that that's the water pump because of all the different coolant lines going to it. So you've got one here, you got one over here. Basically everything's just flowing to it. The first thing we got to do is we got to drain the coolant. So let's get to that first. So if you can see here, this is the coolant overflow tube, just came out of the coolant reservoir. You can see it's kind of nasty, and that's the oil that's mixing into the coolant. We're also going to look at the oil to make sure that it does not have coolant in it, because that means we need to do an oil flush as well. But as of right now, I'm pretty sure it's just oil flowing into the coolant, kind of making this nasty goopy stuff. So we got to drain all the coolant, and then we'll take the water pump off. All right, first thing I want to do is I want to check the oil. I want to make sure we don't have any water going into oil. So I'm going to open up this plug right here. It's not the oil drain plug, but you can check the oil from it. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this plug off. It's a 10 millimeter. Get that loose. And off it comes. And the oil's not flowing out, but we can see here that we do have good, clean oil. Obviously, if you've never seen it before, bad oil or oil that's mixed with water or coolant, it looks like chocolate milk. So it's pretty easy to tell that you have a mixture of coolant and oil. Seriously, it looks just like chocolate milk or like a chocolate milkshake, depending on how clean or dirty your oil is. So we know our oil's good. So next step is we're going to drain the coolant. I got to find that coolant drain. So in draining the coolant, there's a couple steps we're going to take here. And it really depends on how thoroughly you want to drain it. The coolant doesn't look too terrible, so I'm not going to like completely drain it bone dry, but we're going to drain the radiator. We're obviously going to drain and clean out the reservoir tank, and then I'm going to drain the water pump. So the radiator is pretty easy. You're taking off these front fairings here that cover, the electronics. And then there's a bolt at the very bottom of the radiator that you just undo that, the radiator will drain. And then the coolant reservoir is right here. You saw that earlier when I showed you the oil, or the coolant, excuse me. And then the water pump drain bolt is right here underneath the water pump. It's hard to see where I'm pointing, but it's just one, looks like a 12 millimeter bolt. Kind of hard to get to. You're gonna need a box end wrench for it. And then if you really want to be thorough, you can drain the water jackets of the cylinders themselves, and that's these three bolts here. This bottom one drains the cylinder or the jug, and then these two top ones drain the heads. I'm not going to go that far in depth with it. I think if we drain the radiator and we drain the reservoir tank, drain the water pump, we'll get enough coolant out that when we put more in, it'll be clean enough. So let's get to draining. And away she goes, draining away. While the radiator's draining, let's go ahead and start working on getting the coolant reservoir tank out. We're going to take these bolts off here for the fairing, and then the same things on the other side. Those fairings should come apart, and then there's a 10 millimeter bolt that holds the tank to the frame. I'll show you. So, drill makes quick work if you have the right size. Again, if you have the right size. These are 5mm Allens. Y'all ever wonder who Allen is and what he did to get something named after him? Like, why was he so special? Or what about Phillips? Like, who's Phillips? Why does he have a bolt named after him? I want my own bolt, and it's going to be called a bunga bolt. And then one right here in the middle. If we can get to it. There it goes. And as always, especially if you're working outside, keep track of your bolts. So that cover comes off. This one comes off once we get that bolt out. Is that holding that on too? And that should just be this 10mm right here that's holding that on. So let's get this other cover off too. All right, so once you have all the side panels off, coolant reservoir is super easy to come out. There's a 10mm bolt right here, and then it's just kind of tabbed in. We're gonna make sure we take the cap off with the overflow, and we'll just kind of flip all that. It does come out, and then boop, boop, this comes out, and you just gotta have to kind of massage it out without spilling all of your coolant all over the place. And there it is. And as always, we're going to make sure we don't just dump that. So that's gonna go into a bucket. It honestly doesn't even look like there was coolant in this. It looks like it was just water. So that's out, radiator's drained. Put our cap back on that. Let's get to the water pump. All right, I'm gonna try and get you in real close so you can see the drain plug for the water pump. This is the water pump here. I'm looking at the side of the engine. Come underneath, and it's right here. Excuse me, sorry, this one. Yeah, right there. So kind of like in the middle of the pump. And we're gonna open that up, and that'll drain not a whole lot of coolant because there's not a lot that lives in the pump, but we're gonna drain that out. All right, so we got the drain plug open, and like I said, not much came out. But now we're gonna start working on the cover itself, the case for the water pump. So I like to break all of them loose with the socket wrench, and then we'll zip them out with the gun. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are 5mm Allen. There's our water pump. As you can see here, that's the pump. So this is the case. We're going to replace that seal, and I believe we're going to dive a little bit further into it. So we're going to take the pump off, and then we're going to clean all the mating surfaces. I think we're also going to pull the actual case to get behind it too. But yeah, not too bad. All right, so we got the main cover off. Now to take the actual pump housing off, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more 5mm bolts. So same thing, I'm gonna break them loose with the socket wrench, and then we'll zip them off. And then there's also the coolant feed from the radiator, and we'll get to that. That's also a 5mm. That might be pretty tough to get to. Let's see. I might need some extra extensions. Can I reach it? I can. Yeah, that's a little tricky to get to. If you can see where it is, it's coming from there, going all the way into the side of the housing. So let's just get that out real quick. And obviously, you know, I'm doing all this with my catch tray underneath it so that no matter what, even though if I have all the coolant drained, I'm not going to drop any onto the ground. Here at the Bunga household, we have 3 dogs and 2 cats, so we like animals, and we don't want any of them getting into coolant. I'm sure y'all have heard horror stories before, and I've talked about it in my previous videos about animals getting into coolant. It is extremely, extremely toxic for them, so we really don't want them getting into any. Oh, there's another bolt back there. I really don't know how I'm going to get to that one. Well, let me formulate a plan. Okay, when I tell you that bolt was not for the faint of heart, holy cow. It's a very well-placed long extension on the impact. You basically want to come in from right here and just kind of get there into it. But once you have that out, you should be able to pull this off. And there she goes. And there's our pump housing. A couple messed up gaskets. And that's it. So now we'll start replacing all the seals. So first thing we want to do is we want to get all this old gasket off. You know, it's just kind of plastic paper, so it should just peel off. You want to make sure you get that off of both the engine housing and the pump. If it kind of starts pulling off in little tiny pieces, you can always get a razor blade and scrape it, like in here. I'm probably not gonna like it. There we go, that's coming. Yeah, there we go. And you know, make sure it's real clean. But if you look, you can see where, you know, it would be leaking. You've got an oil feed here that's actually feeding the water pump itself, and as soon as that seal fails, I mean, it's over. It's just the whole thing's gonna leak oil into the water, and then you have dirty coolant. So I won't say it's a poor design, but yeah, it might not have been the best design. So we'll get all the seals replaced and we'll keep on trucking. I'm absolutely going to come to my air conditioned shop at any given chance. So we've got the pump housing out. As you can see, there's a plastic gear here, and this is what drives the pump. So there's a little retaining clip here. We're going to pop that off. We're going to replace the bearing in it. So I'm going to bring it in here to get it cleaned up. It doesn't look to be in terrible shape, but you know, we're going to get a razor blade, and first I'm going to scrape all the gasket material off. Let's get that done and over with, so I want to do it later. This is one of my least favorite things. So next thing we need to do is get this retaining clip off, and of course my pliers are not small enough, so we're going to use 2 picks and really struggle. Have the right tools. Great success. That was a pain, but I got it. So then this little gear comes off. There's a little retaining pin in here. And then if you want to, you can pull the bearing. We're going to, because we have a new bearing for it. So we'll pull the bearing out. All right, once you get the 2 sets of snap rings off, you got, you know, let's see, get it out of the way. You got the keyway pin, a snap ring, the drive gear, and another snap ring, in that order. Then the main pump itself should come right out. And this right here is the seal that we are after. This is what's leaking, causing the pump to leak. So that's going to get replaced. That right there. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to pop this bearing out. You can see I've already got it kind of the way out. I'm just taking a screwdriver, putting it on the edge of the bearing, and then popping it with a dead blow mallet. So we'll just get it in there and then pop. And there's our old bearing. So now you can start to see all the seals that are in here. There's one there. We'll pop that one out real quick. And just get a screwdriver and just kind of shoot it across the shop. We'll find that. Couldn't find it, but you can see there's just all this crud built up in here. So we'll get all that cleaned out. And then we've got another seal that we need to press out. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this one out, and this is just gonna come out in the opposite direction. So we'll put it up here on the vise, just kind of act like a, you know, something to kind of hold it. And then this one I'm gonna get a socket, and I'm gonna pop it out with a socket. 16, that does not fit. How about a 15? Oh, 14 it is. Yep, 14 fits perfectly in there. And then we're just gonna pop it again. Oh. Yeah, it's coming. And out it goes. And this one's a little interesting. It's kind of got a spring on it. So, and that seal, yeah, is just donezo. So, that's everything out of the case. You can see there, we got all the seals out. So now we're just gonna start replacing them. So before you start pressing these seals back in, you want to make sure this surface is real clean. As you can see, it's kind of, you know, nasty and grimy in there. So I wiped out some of the grease with a rag, and now I'm going to get a pick and just kind of pick all that other nasty stuff out. So this inner seal, you can see how nasty it is. It's not really coming into focus. It's just all bubbled up and gross, and that is why the pump failed. Well, the pump didn't fail, but that's why I started leaking. This is just, I mean, it's gone. It's donezo. So fortunately, we have a replacement. We'll put that in our old parts bin, and we've got one more seal to take out, and that's this one right here. It's more of a bushing, I believe. It's just right here on the pump shaft itself, the impeller, if you will. So I'm gonna try and get that out. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it yet, but I'm gonna try. Okay, so we were able to get that seal out, just this one right here. Boop. It really wasn't that bad, just kind of got a pick. So we have our full rebuild kit. I don't remember where I got this from. I'll link it in the description. But it comes with all the seals and gaskets we need. So the first one I'm going to do is replace that one that was around the impeller shaft. And they all should just pretty much just press right on. You can put a little bit of grease on them to ease them in if you need to. But other than that, I mean, they should kind of be relatively easy to get back in. So we'll get this one in first. And this one just goes right there on the impeller shaft, just like that. And you can tell what it is because it's white, and it just kind of pushes in. I was able to get it pretty well by hand. And you know, you want to make sure it's seated all the way in. I believe it's ceramic, so I wouldn't go hitting it with anything hard. So maybe if you can, just kind of get like the butt of a screwdriver, get that on there, and then pop it in. But yeah, just be wary. But like I said, I was able to get it pretty much all the way in by hand. Just by kind of pushing it in with my thumbs. So yeah, there's your impeller shaft, new seal. Out with the old and in with the new. This, we're gonna build it kind of from the front in. So this is sort of like a thermostat. You see it's kind of got a spring. This is what keeps the coolant from going into the overflow. So kind of just goes, if we're looking, this is at the front of the motor. This is how it would sit on the motor. So this just kind of presses in like that. So we're gonna kind of get it started just by hand. And then this one, we're definitely gonna need to find a socket that actually fits on it and kind of pop it in with the mallet. So we got it in, got a socket set on it, and I'm just gonna tap with the mallet. And you definitely want to make sure it's going in even and square and flush. And then, you know, just keep tapping it in until you get it all the way seated. Almost there, a couple more love taps. And there it is. Make sure our spring still actuates. And then next we're going to go to the inner seal, which is the one that was failed. Next is our actual oil seal. This is the important one, and it does have a direction. So if you see it's open here, and then if you flip it over, you can see the little spring in there. That spring needs to be facing inwards on the engine. So when you're putting it in, and you've got the little, that one there, a little thermostat one, I don't know what it's called, but a little thermostat one, and that's gonna be facing down. And then it's gonna go with the flat side in, just like that. And that's important, because that's the way it's gonna seal the oil out. So we're gonna get our 14 mil socket, and this really doesn't require a whole lot of force, and we're gonna tap that in. Just until it's flush with the housing.
Dada.
Next thing to go in after that, you can see we've got it pressed in, is the bearing. So I like to preload my bearings with a little bit of grease. It extends the life. These bearings are lubricated by the engine oil. So, you know, you don't really have to put a lot, but I like just to put a little bit in there. That way when it first starts up, it's not dry. Another thing you can do is, you know, you can drip a little bit of engine oil in it. That's probably actually what I'm gonna do. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'll press it in, and then we'll put just a little bit of motor oil on it. So that's gonna go in there. And I believe it was a 14 again. Nope. I'm gonna go a little bit bigger than a 14. Let me see what I got. So an 18 mil fits really well on there. So we'll get that, and then pop, pop. All right, so we've got the bearing in, it's pressed in. I dripped some engine oil on it. Now we're just gonna put the impeller shaft back through the front, like so. I'm gonna do it just real gently. That way it kind of, you know, doesn't pinch that oil seal, and get it through. We're gonna push up on that spring. And as you can see, that first circlip should ride right there on that bearing. So let's get that clip installed. All right, next thing that's gonna go back in is the little keyway pin. This little thing here, it's just gonna slide right here into this hole. Boop, boop. Just like so. And then the drive gear slides back over top of it. And that should hold all that together. And then we've got one last retaining clip on top. And that is that whole assembly back together. So I'll save you the trouble of, you know, watching me put it back on the bike, because it's the same process as taking it off. Once you get it all off, you know, obviously refill the radiator through the radiator cap, which is located under the tank. Refill the coolant reservoir, and then bleed the system. If you don't know how to bleed a coolant system, you can check my video on how to bleed a coolant system. It's over at the Gold Wing. Other than that, we got just a couple more gaskets. This one here is just a little O-ring. That goes right in there. That's where the feed hose comes in. There's a large circular one. That is for the cover right here. And then there's the large gasket right here. And that's gonna go on the back of this. And then last but not least, shoot, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Well, there it is. That's for the drain plug. So, without further ado, that's all I got for you. I really hope y'all found the video useful. As you can see, I've got the bike covered with an umbrella now because it is now raining here. I don't like doing bikes outside. It's really hot and humid, just gross. But anyways, I hope y'all liked the video. Leave me any questions, comments, concerns. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Helps out the channel a lot. But anyways, stay riding, friends.